What's going on, guys? B Scott here with you, and on today's show, we got your waiver wire. Head of week 4. Week 3 is almost in the books. We got Monday Night Football tonight, Philly versus Dallas. It should be a great game. But this is your early waiver wire for those players. Lots of injuries to be concerned with for those top end guys. So I got some players that you'll be able to pick up this week. This should hopefully help bolster your roster. So keep locked and loaded right here at the first 4 downs. What's going on, guys, and welcome back. As I mentioned in the preview, we're going over the waiver wire for week 4. We're going to talk about every single position. I got a few guys at each position that'll be able to help you hopefully bolster your roster. Hopefully you got that W yesterday, and let's press on. So before we get to today's content, don't forget, like the video, subscribe, share, thumb bell, all that good stuff. Comment. If there's a player I didn't mention or you want to hear something about somebody else, drop in the comment section. I'll be glad to get back to you. So let's dive right into it. We'll start at the quarterback position. My number one waiver for the quarterback, Derek Carr. Owned in about 53% of leagues, still available in a lot of leagues, averaging 400 passing yards per game. It's pretty incredible. Playing great. 2+ touchdowns all 3 games. So obviously Derek Carr, in my opinion, every week right now is especially in a 12-man league, a potential starter. Plain and simple. Now they do have a tough road game coming up against the Chargers secondary that's very good. But I think Derek Carr, season long, is going to be there week in and week out and probably finish arguably between the 10 and 15 at quarterback. Plain and simple. He's playing great football. The Las Vegas Raiders defense playing good, but still not put it together completely. That secondary is getting banged up. You see a lot of injuries yesterday against Miami. So Derek Carr got to be picked up. A possible starter in maybe even 10-man leagues if the matchup's right. So Derek Carr, you got to roster him, plain and simple, at least as a backup quarterback. Sam Darnold. I can't believe I'm saying this, but he's playing well. Plain and simple. Consistent production, has 3 rushing touchdowns on the season, averaging 290 or so passing yards. So he's playing well. And Christian McCaffrey, that hurts that offense as a whole. So can Sam Darnold really lift this offense by himself? We'll have to wait and see on that. Chuba Hubbard, obviously, we'll be getting to him a little bit later, but obviously, can he be enough like Christian McCaffrey? Plain and simple, he's not Christian McCaffrey, but you know what I'm saying. Can he fill in enough to help that keep that offense rolling? So Sam Darnold, obvious pickup for me, owned in 22% of leagues on Yahoo. Dallas, Philly, Minnesota, next 3 games. None of these defenses scare me at all, really. Philly's defense plays actually pretty well, and Dallas, Trevon Diggs is great, but still nothing scares me in those 3 matchups. Could see a potential decent day here throughout the season, plain and simple. So Sam Darnold should be rostered. I already talked about Bridgewater a lot. He didn't have to pass yesterday that much. They really just decimated the New York Jets, who are really going to struggle throughout the entire season, plain and simple. They just don't have it put together yet, and it's going to be a long season for the Jets. So Teddy Bridgewater, a guy that also I think you should be must-owning. I've talked to him. I've talked about him over the past few weeks on the waiver wire. So obviously Teddy Bridgewater, if he's available, he should be rostered at least as a quality backup. And then this week, one streamer I got an option of, Taylor Heineke. Now, albeit didn't necessarily play great yesterday, had 2 interceptions, did finish the day with 3 total touchdowns, 2 in the air, 1 on the ground. Still has some value, in my opinion, this week going against an Atlanta defense that just hasn't put it together yet. Heineke is a potential streamer for me this week, albeit that's in a deeper league. You got a guy that's hurt. You got to figure something out. Heineke could have a decent day. He's looked decent through the first couple weeks that he's been the starter. So that's the quarterbacks. We can move on to wide receivers. Emmanuel Sanders. This is a guy, 26% owned in Yahoo leagues. Yesterday, 5 catches, 94 yards, 2 touchdowns. Through the first 3 weeks, 6+ targets. Josh Allen starting to put it together. And Emmanuel Sanders is a nice, safe play as that field stretcher, complimentary of Stephon Diggs, and then obviously Cole Beasley's going to eat up the underneath. So Emmanuel Sanders is a guy, should be rostered in many more leagues on a weekly basis, could find your flex radar, honestly, in some tougher matchups where the Bills might have to put up bigger numbers, bigger points. I mean, seen it yesterday. Josh Allen looked great. Looked back to his old self. Can he sustain that production? If he can, Emmanuel Sanders is a guy that could be in your flex all day long, especially in like a 12-team league. So Emmanuel Sanders must be picked up. Another guy, Tim Patrick, yesterday, 5 catches, 98 yards. KJ Hamler tore his ACL. They ruled him out for the rest of the season. In my opinion, Tim Patrick is, once again, another guy that should be must-own. Plain and simple. Him and Cortland Sutton, these are the guys going forward for the next foreseeable 4 to 6 weeks, possibly, depending on Jerry Jeudy, health coming back, and then Noah Fant. So Tim Patrick, through 3 weeks, has had 10+ fantasy points all 3 weeks. Back-to-back touchdowns, week 1, week 2. 98 yards yesterday on 5 catches. A must-own considering the Denver Broncos schedule gets a lot tougher from here on out, considering they had 3 very easy matchups, but they got the Baltimore Ravens, a beatable secondary. So I definitely like Tim Patrick as a viable option week in and week out, especially as a flex play here. So Tim Patrick must be picked up. And then obviously Henry Ruggs, he's on right at that 50% mark. 7 targets in back-to-back games. Derek Carr's averaging 400 passing yards. You want to have some pieces of, obviously, those yards, plain and simple. So Henry Ruggs is looking like he might be a little more consistent than he was last week. Plus, he's got that big play ability, plain and simple, take the top off the defense. So Henry Ruggs, another guy, must be picked up. These Las Vegas Raiders, they're looking like the real deal. Didn't necessarily have a great game yesterday against Miami Dolphins, but they pulled out the win. That's what matters, 3-0. Leading the division atop with the Denver Broncos. So awesome for the Raiders. Henry Ruggs, Bryan Edwards, like I mentioned him too, did decent. Both these guys should probably be rostered at some point. So, and then a stash for me, Rashad Bateman, owning 11% of leagues. IR from the groin surgery he had. Should be, honestly, on his way back here within the next couple weeks or so. Marquise Brown dropped 2-3 touchdowns yesterday. Case of the drops, plain and simple. Lamar looked to push the ball down the field, and I think Rashad Bateman is a guy that honestly was looking great in training camp, looking great leading up to the season, got the injury. So honestly, he's a guy, in my opinion, that I would definitely be stashing here pretty soon, considering Lamar Jackson. They're going to have to be putting up points. That defense just doesn't look as good. The running game, you saw it struggled a little bit against Detroit yesterday. Jackson had a lot of those deep touchdowns that should have been walking the end zone. It didn't happen, but Bateman is a guy that I would be stashing at the wide receiver position. So on to the running backs. Obviously, Chuba Hubbard, plain and simple, 25% owned. Could be starting for the next 3 weeks. So obviously, he's a guaranteed plug-and-play RB2 at the minimum. Has upside to be even better. Like I mentioned already with Sam Darnold, they got Dallas, Philly, Minnesota. 3 teams that I think running backs can have some success on. So obviously, Chuba Hubbard's your number 1 waiver, more than likely, in most leagues. So you're going to be trying to get him. Looked okay on Thursday night, 11 for 52, did catch 3 passes out of the backfield. So you might see Royce Freeman, his name, a little bit more often than not, considering Christian McCaffrey being out. But obviously, Chuba Hubbard is a guy to own in this backfield going forward for the foreseeable future until McCaffrey gets healthy. And the next one, Michael Carter. Now he's starting to out-carry Ty Johnson. No Tevin Coleman yesterday. It's not pretty. Don't get me wrong. Yesterday, 9 carries, 24 yards, 2 catches, 5 yards. Not great. Not necessarily a guy that jumps off the page at you. But if he's going to be leaning towards the heavier split of a starting offense, of this starting offense going forward, and the Jets, their slate gets a little bit easier considering I think they play a little less dominating defenses. I mean, they've had some tough goes, plain and simple. Carolina, Denver. Just tough defenses to play against. So I like Michael Carter as a definite guy going forward that potentially could fall into that low-end RB2 range later on in the season. Hopefully the Jets can get it working. He's a guy that just should be rostered, plain and simple, in most leagues. And then I'm going to throw Peyton Barber out there. Had a great day yesterday for the Las Vegas Raiders. If Josh Jacobs were to miss next week's game, they play the Los Angeles Chargers, one of the worst run defenses in the league. Gave up 100 yards to Clyde Hilaire yesterday. So Peyton Barber, albeit, is not a great pickup. But hey, if you need an RB2 potential start next week, low-end flex guy, Peyton Barber could be your man if Josh Jacobs were to miss next week's game. He's just getting more run than Kenyon Drake on the early downs, and he looked pretty good yesterday. Plain and simple. I'll say what it is. Had 111 yards and a touchdown on 23 carries. So I know it's Peyton Barber. I'm not sitting here telling you to necessarily pick him up, but they are going against the Chargers. Could be a possible stream option this week. So on to the tight ends. Got a few tight ends for you. Obviously, Dawson Knox. I was saying in the offseason, third year breakout. This is where tight ends tend to really pick up their production, is that third year. Now, Dawson Knox doesn't see a huge load, plain and simple. He doesn't have very many targets, but 8+ PPR points in all 3 games this season, back-to-back games with a touchdown, and he's looking good. And Allen is starting to heat up. So, albeit you have Robert Tonyan, you're starting Gerald Everett, you're starting Jonnu Smith, you're Hunter, these kind of guys, Jared Cook, these types of guys. These are all essentially dart throws at the end of the day, and I think Dawson Knox, you could see a decent production going forward. There are a lot of mouths to feed, but he is looking for him at least early and often. He's a guy that could be a potential boom or bust tight end on a weekly basis. So, owning 10% of leagues, if you're really fighting for that tight end, he's a guy that I would bring up. Next guy, Tyler Conklin, 4% owned. Had a great day yesterday, plain and simple. 7 catches, 70 yards, and a touchdown. It ain't into KJ Osborne's production a little bit. Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen still did great, but Conklin coming into the season was a little banged up. So that probably played a factor in the first couple weeks. He's looking fully healthy. He looks good to me. He passed the eye test against Seattle defense. So Tyler Conklin is definitely a guy that you could potentially be streaming. Now, yes, like I said, tight end's a wasteland. Sometimes you want to get ahead of it if you don't have that big tight end. So Tyler Conklin is a name that you could potentially pick up. And then Pat Freiermuth. I talked about it a little bit over the last couple weeks, especially my tight end videos, where this is a guy that I think his production will start to increase and increase. And you saw last week he got the touchdown. His targets have increased on a weekly basis. Steelers look bad on offense. Their defense is starting to get banged up a little bit. And yes, Roethlisberger has not looked good. But for checkdowns, you see Najee Harris, 14 catches yesterday on 19 targets. Pat Freiermuth found the end zone in this one. I could see going forward a decent amount of production here for Pat Freiermuth. Just slowly, gradually getting better. He's starting to outplay Eric Ebron, and the pass catchers are hurt. Obviously, Deontay Johnson missed the game. Juju Smith-Schuster knocked out of the game. Chase Claypool seems always hurt in the game and comes back and plays, but still, the receiving core looks pretty banged up. I like Pat Freiermuth going forward. 8% owned is a guy that you might be seeing his name more often than not moving forward in the season. And then obviously I got a few defenses to stream. Tennessee Titans defense on the road against the New York Jets. They have sacked the quarterback at least 2 times in every single game. Tennessee, their defense doesn't look necessarily outstanding, but they're playing the New York Jets. So it's an obvious potential start for me. New Orleans Saints only owned in 48% of leagues, which is crazy. Their defense has played really, really good over the few first weeks. Outside of, they did lose to Carolina, but it wasn't a crazy loss. Really put it to the New England Patriots. It was healthy. Marshawn Lattimore, that secondary. This week at home against the New York Giants football team, must start defense. New Orleans Saints, plain and simple. And then Cincinnati, their defense actually has looked better than I thought they would through the first 3 weeks. They're playing pretty good. And now they're at home against the Jacksonville team that loves to turn the ball over. So obviously you're firing up Cincinnati defense, New Orleans defense, Tennessee. These are all stream defenses for me this week ahead of week 4. So that's been the waiver wire. Some players that you should be looking to bolster your roster, potentially start making those moves to kind of boost your team. Look to aim for higher trade targets, better your team, especially through these waiver wire guys. So anyway, if you like the video, don't forget, subscribe, share, thumb, bell, all that good stuff, and then comment if there was a player I did not mention. You want to hear about him? Drop in the comment section. I'll be glad to get back to you. So for the first 4 downs, it's been B. Scott, and I'm out.